Drive Live Formula One.
The final chance to dial in before qualifying then to this tricky Miami Grand Prix circuit, which twists its way around the Hard Rock Stadium. A newly resurfaced track has made grip a premium to come by for some. Already a couple of off-track moments for Nico Hülkenberg and Charles Leclerc, both finding the walls in Friday's free practice sessions, with many only just keeping it on the track. One thing we do know, it's getting tight in the midfield, but can anyone catch up to Max Verstappen in the Red Bull? We're just about ready for final practice. Welcome to live coverage. My name is Harry Benjamin. Alongside me is former Renault Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer. And Jolyon, it was a up and down Friday for many. Not the best of endings though for Charles Leclerc and his Ferrari, who found the barriers towards the end of FP2.
Yeah, it was Leclerc pushing to the maximum throughout, trying to find the pace to match Max Verstappen, and just went in too deep and hit the wall at turn 6. So ended in the barriers, damaged the right front, but it wasn't catastrophic for him. It was near the end of the session. Nico Hülkenberg had done the same, well, a different incident, but had hit the barriers in FP1. And the track was pretty slippery yesterday. The drivers were struggling. They don't like the newly resurfaced tarmac here. They didn't like it last year. They still don't like it. But it means that we're seeing a lot of action, a lot of lockups, a lot of slides, drifts from the Formula One cars. It's been quite fun to watch.
Well, absolutely. As we get ready for FP3, it's a little bit cooler than yesterday, but I think it's still pretty hot, which I think our pit lane reporter Christian Hugill can attest to.
I can certainly attest to it. It is absolutely baking, but we do have a bit more cloud cover today, so it's not quite as intense as it was during FP2. But just listen to this. As soon as I say just listen to this, they've actually quietened the music, which is typical, isn't it? But I was going to say that the atmosphere is absolutely bouncing. They are pumping music through the grandstands, which are slowly but surely starting to fill up ahead of third practice. And I've seen so many people this weekend having the time of their lives. I mean, I'm one of them, but you talk about Formula One capturing the hearts of America. It's a lovely atmosphere here today. It's really ramped up a notch ahead of free practice and qualifying.
I thought it was going to be a really whimsical start or a bit of info there from Christian. Listen to this, and then just silence.
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
they literally, in pure comic timing, just dimmed the music as soon as I said it. Like, thanks, cheers, guys.
Well, it's the risk you take every time, but thanks, Christian. We'll come back to you throughout the session as we see more fans coming in for today's sessions. The fake marina in Miami starting to fill up. And of course, a historic beginning really for Formula One in the US. The first of 3 races in America for this season. Miami the first. We'll go to Circuit of the Americas later on in the year, and Las Vegas as well. In fact, the first time since 1982 that there have been 3 races in the USA on the same F1 calendar. How do you like that as a stat?
Do you know which country has had the most different Grand Prix on the calendar in Formula One history?
Would it be America?
It would be. It was a very pointed question. You got it right. And it was America even before Miami came onto the calendar. And now Vegas is on as well. They've had so many different circuits host a Formula One Grand Prix in the past. And for the most part of 70 years, Formula One hasn't really stuck in America. They haven't really quite got it. They've got their own sports that we don't quite get so much in Europe. But now it's really booming. 3 Grand Prix, all really well attended. Well, Austin and Miami so far are. We'll see Vegas, but I can't imagine it won't be well attended, certainly this year. And it's great to see.
Yeah, Vegas is the one that everyone wants to go to, and you're quite right. This Miami track, the 11th track to host a Grand Prix in the USA. Vegas will become the 12th when it gets on to the grid. Still waiting for the green light to come on. Still about a minute or so before we get the session underway, Jolyon. And Mercedes really up and down FP1 and FP2. They set the benchmark in free practice. Well, I know it's only practice, but George Russell, steering rack change for him after issues. FP2, though, Lewis Hamilton describing it as a bit of a punch to the gut.
Yeah, he was pretty doom and gloom at the end of yesterday, which you wouldn't have thought when Mercedes were 1-2 at the end of FP1, but they had a big turnaround. Lewis, it was sort of reiterating what we've known for the last year, but their car can be quite spiky in terms of performance. If they get it into the right window, it works, it's hooked up, they can be quick. If they don't, they suddenly lose all balance in the car, and they're really struggling. And they're a team that were really scratching their head yesterday. I do think they flattered themselves quite a lot in FP1 by bolting on a set of softs right at the end, went to the top of the times when the track was at its best. But they're full from grace for FP2. They really got a little bit lost. So a lot of head scratching, and we'll see what both Hamilton and Russell can do in this session now.
Well, free practice 3 underway then. Green light at the end of the pit lane, and Esteban Ocon in the Alpine is the first car out on track. Christian.
I just so happened to be stood right next to Esteban Ocon's car as he was the first to bolt out of the garage and head down the pit lane. And I have some important breaking news on the fake marina that you were talking about, Harry. The fake marina is no longer entirely fake. I had a little tour of the facility. I'd only ever actually been here since Wednesday, Thursday. I'd only ever been in the paddock area, but I had a proper look round the site today, and the fake marina has had 2 fairly small, admittedly, swimming pools put in it, but there is actual water in the fake marina now. I say it doesn't fill it, but, you know, every little helps. So that's my main headline for the fake marina.
Did you have a dip?
Oh, God, I'd have loved to, because it was far warmer than it is now, but no, I avoided the temptation. I also went above the circuit in one of the cable cars they have, and Jolien was just talking then about Formula One's impact. You don't quite realise the size and scale of this event until you're in the sky. And it is an incredibly impressive operation that Formula One comes to this part of the world for one weekend only, absolutely dominates the space around this part of the world, around the Miami Dolphin Stadium. And it's huge. It's such a big, vast campus with so many parts to it. It's super impressive. The one thing I did just spot, you heard me hesitate a little bit there. You guys might have had a better view of it than me, but I saw a Mercedes getting on the brakes because an Aston Martin came out of the pits possibly a little sooner than it should have done. It was only out the corner of my eye, but want to keep an eye on if you see a replay.
Yeah, I think it was Alonso and Hamilton in the pit lane. We'll keep an eye for a replay on that one. I'm sure that we will get one. Is the cars funneling out, and not that many of them. There is only Alonso, Hamilton, Ocon and Stroll out on circuit. Crucially, can the water in the fake marina, can you moor a boat in it? Because that would mean it's no longer a fake marina.
No, so the boats are still very much sat on tarmac. And imagine you're not talking about swimming pools that are like a big, you know, a big hotel swimming pool.
With paddling pools, Dave.
Yeah, we're talking fairly small paddling pools.
Front tyres are vibrating already.
Okay, copy.
Just hearing a bit of team radio there from Lewis Hamilton, complaining already for vibrations on the front of his front tyres. He's out on the soft compound of tyres. We've got a mixture out there, really soft. The 2 Aston Martins on hards and Ocon on the medium, but early stages to be feeling some vibrations and problems on the front of those tyres, Jolien.
I wonder if Hamilton's gone out on a used set of tyres to start this one. He's gotten on the softs very early. Sainz and Leclerc have just headed out on the softs as well. And is he doing an install lap and he's going to come back in? Alonso's done exactly that on the hard tyres. Aston Martin love to put a heat cycle through a tyre and go, but Hamilton's launching straight into a flying lap. So it doesn't appear to be the case for Lewis.
Yeah, Esteban Ocon, the only man so far to have any kind of lap time on the board, a 1:31.1 on the medium compound tyre, the Frenchman in the Alpine, but Lewis Hamilton embarking on a lap now. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull was speaking yesterday after the race about how it almost felt like he was driving on intermediate tyres. He was really struggling for grip, and at a time where Perez has been a little bit hyped up here, because if anyone's going to take a championship challenge to Max Verstappen, it's going to be his teammate. 6 points between them at the top of the timings. Perez needs to find a little bit more time now. He is the street king, but at the moment not quite showing street cred on this track.
Yeah, he had a difficult day yesterday, and that's the headline stuff, isn't it, really? Verstappen v Perez right now. The byline is, can Mercedes or Ferrari close the gap? Mercedes not happy, Ferrari hit the wall, so that wasn't a great day for them, which means it was a pretty good day for Verstappen. Top of the times, and with everyone else struggling. Aston Martin as well, not showing a huge amount of one-lap pace, still in the mix with Alonso and Stroll, but not really clawing their way in. But it's Perez that beat Verstappen. And Perez, he's got to make sure he doesn't end up like Valtteri Bottas at Mercedes. And if he wants to be taken seriously by the time we get into next year or the next time that he's fighting Verstappen, he needs to put together a run that can really challenge Max at least into the halfway season of the championship. And then you never know what can happen. Rosberg was not as quick as Hamilton. He was pretty good, but he wasn't quite as quick as Hamilton. But through a bit of bad luck for Hamilton or good luck for Rosberg, and just being there, applying pressure, he managed to be champion, and he managed to really make it a very tense, close fight at Mercedes. Overall, I think he was, the gap between them was not as big as we've seen from Perez and Verstappen so far. But if Checo can up his game, make it consistent, then we've got a championship fight on our hands. But yesterday didn't look like a great day for him.
Well, Sergio Perez will be looking to make it back-to-back wins if he can this weekend in Miami. We'll see how he gets on. Hashtag BBC F1 if you want to get in touch about anything. And there's a few requests for a 6, so I shall do so. 53 and 56, 55, 54. 53 minutes to go of this pre-practice 3 session as Carlos Sainz crosses the line to go fastest with a 1:37. He's on the soft tyre ahead of Ocon and Hamilton. The rest all on outlaps for the time being. Stroll's also out there along with Alonso, Gasly, Perez and Max Verstappen now on an outlap. The rest of the field all still in the pits, including the home hero, Logan Sargeant, the local boy, a really local boy. Grew up in Fort Lauderdale, which is only about a 20-30 minute trip north of here. In fact, went karting just at a local kart track round the corner from this Miami International Autodrome. So one of the truly local home drivers and the first American to race in a US Grand Prix since Alexander Rossi in 2015 at the Austin Grand Prix at COTA. So Sargeant and Williams just saying they need a little bit more time to dial in after Friday's free practice sessions. But a lot of pressure for a home driver, especially round a track that he has never raced before.
Yeah, there is, because I think with the home race, the only American in the field, and an American in the field is big news to start with. And he's a Florida boy. He'll have a lot of friends, family, maybe some commercial partners with him as well this weekend. So, yeah, there's a bit more at stake for Sargeant. I mean, we talked about him yesterday, and I do think overall he's acquitted himself solidly in the first 4 races, mainly by showing some flashes of one-lap pace. But he's going to have to start putting it together at some point. And he didn't look like he had the best of starts to the weekend yesterday. New circuit for him, even though he grew up down the road. He's not raced at this one before. There's a few drivers in the field that haven't, and a street circuit is not an easy one to get up to speed, because you need to build up, find the margins. If you overcook it too quickly, as Hulkenberg actually did yesterday, did a very quick lap, then tried to push a little bit more, found the wall, you end up backing yourself into a bit of a corner. And actually De Vries did as well yesterday. So the other guys that didn't know the track both binned it. At least Sargeant kept it on the tarmac.
Well, as Sergio Perez crosses the line to set the fastest lap time so far on the Red Bull soft tyre. Christian, you're outside Mercedes. What's going on with them?
Well, we mentioned a little earlier Lewis Hamilton coming on the radio complaining about steering and grip. He just came into the pits for a very brief visit. It was notable that he was stationary in the box for 2 or 3 seconds, and every single member of the crew around the car, as his teammate George Russell just pulls out of the pits now. Every single member of the pit crew just looked down at the tyres. They had a right little look, and then Lewis was on his way, but they didn't opt to change anything and stuck with the soft tyres.
Thank you, Christian. And out he goes into the Grand Prix circuit of Turn 1. In fact, 3.3 miles, 5.4 kilometres, 19 corners make up this Miami International Autodrome, and a couple of the DRS zones have been shortened by the FIA for this race. And we heard just before we came on air from the BBC Sports chief F1 writer Andrew Benson. There was a bit of chat in the drivers' briefing yesterday about the shortening of this DRS zone. Similar happened in Baku as well. There was quite the discussion briefing about the DRS zones and why it happened. The drivers were told it could not be changed for this weekend unless there was a safety issues, but the general trend will be reviewed ahead of Imola. The argument for many drivers is that relying on the data of last year, as the FIA does not work because the cars are harder to follow this year. FIA's position is there is only a small data set right now, but they are open to the arguments being made. So essentially, the drivers don't want it to be shortened because it means less chance of an overtake.
Well, I think overall this is not actually as black and white as the drivers are making it right now. More overtaking doesn't necessarily make better racing, in my opinion. You read out a stat yesterday that apparently there were 110 overtakes in this race last year. Seems unfathomable, but apparently you verified it, and it's true. Although there are about 45 maybe legitimate overtakes.
Yes, so the 110 number that I came out with was technically every time a car even went a millimetre ahead of another one in an attempt of a pass.
So that's a ridiculous stat.
But also into the pits and out, that includes that, also lap one.
It's a preposterous stat.
It was in the stats, but then I double confirmed with Sean Kelly, who is Mr. Statman, and he double confirmed to me that as 110 might well be true, but it's more realistic that 45 was the actual on-track overtake number.
And single confirming was not enough. You had to double confirm.
Double. I don't do anything single confirming. Confirmedly? No. Double only.
So 45 overtakes, and yet people won't remember last year's Miami Grand Prix as a thriller. There was an overtake for the lead, but no one will remember it because it was done in a DRS on a straight with Verstappen. Leclerc made a little mistake and Verstappen came straight through. If you actually made it harder to overtake and you remember the good overtakes, and there's 10 of them, then maybe that makes a better race. Think of Bahrain this year. Alonso, a couple of fantastic passes. That makes a better overtake than just Alonso having pace in the Aston Martin and just DRS drive-bying everyone because he's got a better car. And this is the balance that the FIA need to strike. The drivers were unhappy in Baku, and it was a bit of a train. There were some couple of passes, but not a great deal. And there's going to be a balance in there somewhere. But just the pure stats and the pure numbers of overtakes are not what I want to see in Formula One, at least anyway. I want to see high-quality overtakes, which means not making it too powerful, the DRS. Find the balance of making it an aid rather than a gimme when you get the DRS. And the extra problem is, the DRS on some cars is so powerful. So the Red Bulls pick up DRS, they're a second back, and they blast past anyone. Whereas no one could pass the Red Bulls with DRS. So it's trying to find the big trade amongst all the mix of data. And that part's a tricky job for the FIA.
We want to see 110 definite on-track
good quality overtakes.
Good quality overtakes. That's
You'll
what we
have no
want.
voice left if that's the case.
But surely the bigger issue right here is that the cars are finding it harder to follow this year. Why?
Well, because they've added downforce. The last year was the first year of the new regulations. Everyone was starting from zero, and the cars are getting a little bit quicker. They're getting quicker because they're finding little bits of aero improvement. The more aero they get, the more they need clean airflow to use it, and so you're losing more of that percentage-wise when you have a car that's finding its pace with downforce, with aero. So it's a small amount, though. We're nowhere near back to 2021 and the old aero regs. It's a small amount. I'm still looking at drivers being able to follow pretty closely when you contextualize it with the previous generation. Think of Perez hustling in behind Verstappen before Max pitted, 6/10ths back. He's able to follow pretty close. So it's not doomsday just yet. 4 races into the season, in my opinion. Hamilton's had a bit of a lock-up on this soft tyre run, whilst we've been chatting as well. He's currently 9th quickest out of 9 runners in the Mercedes, 1.2 seconds down on Max Verstappen. And locked the left front. Quite a big lock-up in turn 17, big braking zone.
Yeah, as Charles Leclerc comes out for an outlap, he is less than a 10th at the moment away from Max Verstappen, who has the fastest lap time of the 1:28.9. The Alfa Romeo of Zhou Guanyu making his way around the track to set his first competitive lap time, comes across the line and goes 10th, just behind Lewis Hamilton. And Zhou is on the Red Bull soft set of tyres. So is this FP3 session then essentially a rehearsal for what we're going to see later with qualifying? Is that the kind of running we're going to be seeing focus for the rest of this 45 minutes or so?
It appears that it's fairly well straight down to it. Yeah, low run, low fuel running right now. Perez, the sound you can hear now, has done the fastest middle sector, heads down the long straight, up 8th gear, 340 kilometers an hour, 180 miles per hour, hammers the brakes, and here he goes driving up towards the line, and he's going to go to the top of the tyres, 3/10 up on Verstappen on the soft tyres, because they're all trying to get their eye in for qualifying. Some are on a medium still, saving a set of softs for later on.
Yeah, Gasly being one of them. He is in 4th at the moment. It's Perez, Verstappen, Alonso on the medium compound tyre, on the soft compound tyre, who goes up into 3rd spot, just in front of Leclerc. Gasly the top 5, Sainz, Russell, Bottas, Ocon and Hamilton the top 10, then it's Zhou and Nick de Vries the top 12. The rest we all await for a competitive lap time. This is the sound of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. He retakes that top spot as he crosses the line, comes out of the final corner and goes over 6.5 tenths quicker than his teammate.
Fastest in the first 2 sectors. Perez was actually quicker in the final sector, but there is a pretty big gap now between the two of them. And with that, Verstappen has matched his best time from yesterday as well. So the pace straight down to what we saw yesterday in the quali simulation runs. Verstappen with a big margin to the field, but we're still yet to see anything from 2 Haas cars are still in the pits. Haven't gone out at all in the first 15 minutes of the session. Then still yet to see anything from the McLarens, the Williams and Tsunoda.
Yeah, both Haas drivers yesterday pretty buoyant, despite Nico Hülkenberg finding the wall. With their upgrades that they have brought for this weekend, Haas bringing a new floor and looking competitive straight off the back. Nico Hülkenberg said, well, for FP2 we paid the price for what happened in FP1 when he span around and hit the wall. But Kevin Magnussen too, showing a good turn of pace. So promising signs for both Haas drivers. But as you say, Jolien, not out of the pits just yet. Lando Norris in the McLaren starts a flying lap on the soft compound tyre through turn 1 and then straight into the long S's really that make up this tricky sector 1 as the Papaya McLaren makes its way around.
It was quite quick in FP2 yesterday. Pretty happy with the car overall, Lando, taking plenty of curb through the first sector in the faster stuff, supporting a beach ball helmet.
Well, nearly every driver's got a different helmet for this weekend, but Lando Norris, yeah, going with the beach ball vibes.
What are your thoughts on the helmet design reveals that went on before this one?
So Lando Norris was in a swimming pool with his, wasn't he? Doing what a beach ball does and having a bit
playing
of play
with
around.
The beach ball with the beach ball helmet.
Alex Albon has a golf ball inspired helmet, and with his partner, who is a professional golfer as well, and they were on the golf course with some nice edits of whacking a golf ball with a club and then it turning into the helmet. I don't know, I quite like it. It's kind of jazzy, it's snazzy, it's very American. You're not a fan, I can tell.
No, it's corny.
Did you never do any good?
No, get out.
Helmet reveals.
Not interested.
Did you? How many? Did you have any special?
Doing the fad at the moment of doing like baby gender reveals. Famous couples do. They pin something, or Harry Kane kicks a ball and it's poof. It's a boy or it's a girl or whatever. It's all going down that way, isn't it? Where Albon suddenly he's playing golf and then it's poof,
But it's
the
for the
helmet's
social
going in that
media
hole
clout, Jolien. You wouldn't understand. Go on, how many helmet designs did you have in your F1 career?
I had a Silverstone special that was a subtle tweak on my normal one.
So what was the point?
Because it was a subtle tweak, but it kept my identity.
Okay. Is that when you retired on the opening formation lap?
On the only formation lap.
Yep.
Yeah. No, my special helmets went appallingly, and I had them only in Monaco and Silverstone, and it was pants. Maybe that's why I begrudged them. I actually quite like the helmets, but that's why you've got to ask a Gen Z guy about.
You've got a Gen Zer and a millennial in the commentary box, but Sebastian Vettel was became very well known, especially during his dominant years under Latius, for changing up a helmet left, right and centre. Did he change the game really for helmet design?
Oh, it was a lot, wasn't it? It was a lot. But then he actually did, because then they brought in the rules saying you cannot change the helmet. So he completely changed the game, did Sebastian Vettel. To be honest, the helmet actually now is an accessory, isn't it? It's obviously the safety device that you have to have, but it's a fashion accessory underneath the halo, because you don't see it so much with the halo there. It's less identifiable. Unless you jump on board with Lewis Hamilton, see the rainbow on the top as he's about to have a lock-up down at turn 17 again. A little bit wide, slithering not too badly wide on the exit, but he's not having an easy time of it out there.
That little lock-up, but doesn't seem like too much harm done. Verstappen currently tops the timesheets, Leclerc second, Perez in third. Christian is outside Red Bull.
I am. For the biggest celebrity spot of the weekend so far, I'm currently looking directly at Christian Horner, the Red Bull team boss, having a deep conversation with Elon Musk, king of Twitter and of electric car fame, generic electric cars. This is the BBC. And they are deep in conversation at the moment. And I can also tell you that Elon Musk is surrounded by what I presume are very rich people. And you can tell they're very rich business people, because a couple of them are wearing shirt and jacket combinations that they absolutely can't pull off. One of the people in the garage has got a very silver jacket on with a black shirt. Looks terrible, especially for the weather. But he's rich, so he presumes he can get away with it. So there you go. I know Joleon's not a fan of celebrity spots. I can only apologise, Jolien. But Elon Musk is currently in deep conversation with Christian Horner. I might just shout, see if I can get my blue tick back.
Well, it might be crucial. They might be planning the next helmet reveal for Perez or Verstappen, boosting the social media numbers with Elon Musk in the garage this weekend.
Could be.
Could be. You're not here for any of that glitz and glamour. You're here for the pure racing, the legitimate overtaking. That's what you want. None of this social media nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here we go then. The Nico Hülkenberg Haas and the Kevin Magnussen Haas are now back out on track. Well, I should say out track for the first time. Magnussen, his first lap time was good enough for 7th position, 1.2 seconds off on the soft tyre. Nico Hülkenberg making his way around at the moment. How much would that crash in FP1 have damaged his confidence a little bit? And this is a guy who was well versed in Grand Prix racing.
Balance is okay, just struggling for overall pace.
Russell on the radio there for Mercedes, just further condemning Mercedes' woes in free practice.
That's pretty bad news, really, to hear that. If you're struggling for pace, you're 1.4 seconds off. You want it to be that the car's understeering like a pig or something, and you can just add front wing and find lap time. But if the balance is okay, it's a bit of a head scratcher to know how to easily just add performance. Is it in getting the tyres into the right window? Can you change the downforce level on a circuit that's got some long straights, but also some tight, twisty corners as well? That's not a great... I mean, it's good for Russell. He's got a balance and he can work with it, but the car's just missing performance outright then.
The sound you're hearing is Alex Albon in the Williams. We had a momentary yellow flag, and I wonder if this is the reason why. It is indeed. It's very similar to Hamilton. Locks up the front left. This is radio.
Guys, you've got to remind me to reset switches. I did the whole lap in beaming 1.
So that's a brake balance for Albon, and did the whole lap. He got to turn 17, I think, before he realised something was up. So managed to just go straight on and not commit to the corner, get offline and have a dabble with the wall, and he will rejoin again now. And he was late out as well. The two Williams are behind everyone on laps. Hamilton's done the most on 12. Albon has just crossed the line on the end of that aborted one and completed his 5th lap.
36 minutes and 26 seconds of this practice 3 session. Carlos Sainz, it's going rather well around on this latest lap at the moment. Fastest of anybody in the middle sector. He's currently down in 9th, so we should certainly look to improve that time. Verstappen is still the fastest, the top 3 in the timings. Leclerc and Sergio Perez, the top 3 in this session. Sainz making his way around the final corner now, and crosses the line to go second, a 1:28.1 for Sainz. And every driver is now been out to set a lap time, but languishing at the bottom. The two AlphaTauris. We talked a lot about AlphaTauri over the course of the weekend so far, Jolien. Despite the pressure perhaps that is on Nyck de Vries' shoulders for performance, generally at the moment it looks like both AlphaTauris are just struggling for pure performance pace. And it wasn't too long ago that team boss Franz Tost was saying he didn't quite trust his engineering team as Esteban Ocon out on track. The sound you're hearing in the Alpine, not sure which way to go. There's a Haas of Nico Hulkenberg dawdling in the middle of the road, and Ocon not very happy about that. A wave of the hand and blasts by on the DRS straight.
Yeah, I think it was actually Magnussen that was in the way, but there was kind of space. It wasn't anything too bad, but Ocon just didn't know whether to go left or right and just couldn't commit because, as you said, the dawdle there was space, but you just can't predict when someone's sort of meandering there what they're going to do next, and you can't know that you can charge past them at full speed, or you might have an airborne incident if you launch the back of them suddenly. So Ocon a bit annoyed. It's practice. He'll get away with it and carry on. Down in 15th place at the moment, Ocon. And the two Alpines, the only cars on the medium tyres, it seems.
AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda crosses the line and gets himself up into 12th. We have an Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso off track, and it's proving to be quite a little bit popular, that runoff area coming into turn 17. Alonso finds it, manages to do left-hand down and gets back onto the track and goes around the final corner to start another one.
De Vries at the same time jumps up to 11th and Tsunoda 13th. So for AlphaTauri, you mentioned that they were languishing at the bottom.
Yeah, just as I'd say that.
They had a tough weekend, or tough day yesterday, but that's at least better for now. For Alonso, just too late on the brakes. Lock up at the left front, released the brake immediately, trying to save those tyres for another lap, and that meant he was in the runoff. And where we joined him, recovering from that and circulating still, but he's done 11 laps on those set of tyres.
Nico Hulkenberg in the Haas, nearly going the same way as Charles Leclerc did yesterday in turn 7 and finding the barriers, but just about avoids it. Big snap on the steering wheel, but keeps it going. Ocon gets up to 11th meanwhile. And we know it's Jolien's favourite subject, helmets. But Christian, I believe you've got more to add on this.
I've got more to add on that. I'll talk about Formula One first. I should really, shouldn't I? Both Mercedes just come into the pits. So whatever issues they're having at the moment, both drivers have had enough for now. And both teams are now, you can see they are having a proper look at the data. So homework being done down here at Mercedes. But on helmets, the one thing we've not mentioned all weekend is that Red Bull, who got an awful lot of stick in the closed season from a lot of fans for having basically the same livery year after year after year, this weekend for Miami have brought with them a subtle change to livery. There is some purple, blue and pink stripes down the side pods of the car, for those who haven't seen pictures yet, for a special Miami livery. Now, I believe it was designed by a fan, and Red Bull gave fans the opportunity to design and have picked one. So, Jolien, I don't know whether, I know you've expressed your thoughts on helmet designs, but where do we stand on one-off liveries?
Yeah, I quite like them. You'll be shocked to hear, actually.
No, me too.
Here's Ocon.
Yeah, the grip is picking up on the track massively.
He's happy in the Alpine at the moment. He's just improved to go 11th on the medium tyres. But I don't think you can give Red Bull stick for keeping with the Red Bull colours all these years. What are they supposed to do? That is their identity, the brand of Red Bull. The same way Ferrari have been red forever in various different shades slightly, but that's how they are, isn't it?
But Ferrari at least tweak it a bit, don't they? Like, for example, on this year's car, they've got the Ferrari and the sort of old-fashioned font on the rear wing, and that's nice. I feel like some of the other teams make some subtle changes while keeping within the same brand, whereas Red Bull are like, no, forget that. We are being the same every year. So, no, I kind of wish that we did have some more subtle changes from Red Bull.
But they had the white livery for Honda, didn't they? In Turkey, I think it was a couple of years ago. Yeah. That was quite snazzy. They've had they've
had a fair few over the years.
They've had the testing liveries, the camo ones that have been quite eye-catching.
Go back to 2005, and they had a Star Wars livery around Monaco.
Yes. Yeah. If you go to nearly 20 years, you can find another.
Jolien, didn't you have to dress up as a Star Walker or something? Or was the car actually
a Star Walker?
What do you call it, Skywalker?
You sound like you're also not a Star Wars guy.
I'm not a Star Wars. I was always more of a Star Trek kind of guy. A rogue choice. But yeah, when you ran it, you had a different You had different overalls, but was the car actually
Car was the
changed?
same.
Car was the same.
Car was the same.
You still got the overalls?
Never kept them. They're in Enstone somewhere, probably in a
On display.
In a pile with Nico Hulkenberg's Darth Vader outfit that he had for the day. I don't even know what I was supposed to be. It was a nice orange, very fetching suit. I like the Red Bull today. Verstappen is quickest and he's on another lap, and it's quite eye-catching. A little bit of Miami Dolphins colours, the light blue and the purple.
Yeah, well,
violet.
I can tell you exactly. It's incorporated pink, teal, and purple lines. If we're being specific about the type of colour choice that we're going down, that's the talk coming out of Red Bull. Designed by a fan and a graphic design student, Martina Adriano, as part of Red Bull's Make Your Mark competition, set up for fans who will get the chance to design a livery for all of the US races. So they will have another one for Austin and another one for Vegas.
Well, Christian will be delighted.
I know.
And
more to talk about in free practice.
Exactly.
Let's not forget.
What? I'll be happy to see it as well. Verstappen, fastest of anyone in the first sector, personal best in the middle sector, with his teal, purple, and what's the other one? White,
pink, teal, and purple lines.
Okay.
Which is very much Miami.
On board, final corner, turn 17, hits the brakes, makes the apex. That's where a lot of drivers have been running a little bit wide, but Verstappen got to that tight left-hander, accelerates, arcing through a left, then a right, hugs the inside, narrows the distance, and comes across the line to do another personal best. He's only done 9 laps, Verstappen, so he's actually been quieter than a few out there. 11 for both Ferraris, who are second and third, Sainz and Leclerc. 10 for Perez, who's just left the pits now as well. Verstappen has just finished his 9th lap and extended the gap at the front, 0.4 seconds. The iconic teams of the past, you got to keep a livery. It's a good livery as well, Red Bulls. I think it's a really good livery, the normal Red Bull one. You just get a bit bored of it after a while, maybe.
Me personally, no. But I think it's part of their brand.
One gets a little bit bored.
One gets a little bit bored. But hashtag BBCF1, Chris getting in touch. Coulthard got a podium in 2006 in Red Bull. He had to wear a cape on the podium when they had a Superman livery special around Monaco as well. A cape. Now that you didn't have to do a cape. Well, you never got on the podium.
The weight.
The weight of it.
It wouldn't be very comfortable either, would it?
Not very aerodynamic.
There are a few teams on the grid that don't have like an absolute identity with the livery, and they're mixing it up. Williams changed the livery a little bit year on year. McLaren now, and the more that liveries are going back to carbon, that's another bone I've got to pick with F1 design at the moment. Trying to just strip the liveries to have as much just black painted carbon or black unpainted carbon on the cars. Got to have a good iconic livery.
You absolutely do. Thank you, Amit, for getting in touch. Hashtag BBCF1, who has dug up from the archives the picture of Jolyon Palmer alongside Nico Hulkenberg in your special Star Wars livery. So the car is actually the same, but you're wearing a delightful bright orange. I think that must be a Skywalker uniform. I think that's what they're called.
No, you got to stop there. I don't think there's such thing, is there? A Skywalker uniform.
Actually, no. Rebecca has said you're a Rebellion X-Wing pilot, to be specific. So,
a very good one.
Thank you very much for getting in touch on all that. Drama in the pit lane. Here's Piastri.
Was quite late by the Red Bull. Yeah, we saw that.
It was okay. Perez emerging from the pits. Piastri did have to slow down slightly. It was a fraction late, but that'll be a nothing moment. We also had nothing from that Alonso Hamilton one right at the start of the session as well. So it's play on. And Hulkenberg on a set of softs has just launched up to 5th. So as Ocon reported a few moments ago, the grip level certainly is starting to come up now. Time's tumbling. Verstappen now with the fastest lap of the weekend with what he's just done, 1 minute 27.6. Hulkenberg 1.2 seconds adrift, but he's in 5th place. That shows the gap we've got out front now.
But I think it also highlights it is really tight in this midfield gaggle, actually, with your Hasses. Your Aston Martins are even down there at the moment. Your Alpines, you've got an Albon up there as well. Mercedes finding themselves down there too. And I think Haas, with these new floor upgrades, I think they're playing down a little bit how much improvement they've made. The true test will be a little later on in qualifying, but certainly going well. AlphaTauri bringing some new upgrades as well, but they're saying Yuki Tsunoda tried a front wing yesterday. It's not game-changing, but there are some improvements, so they're sticking with it today. Ferrari, a new floor, Aston Martin bringing some cooling elements, Alfa Romeo trying out a new beam wing. So a few bits and bobs being brought by some of the teams, and just trying to gather as much data as they can. As we see Sergio Perez in the Red Bull making his way across the line and losing a little bit of time in that final sector, but does find overall time and is in third, a 1:28.1. Verstappen fastest, a 1:27.6 to his name. Then it's Sainz, Perez, Leclerc, Hülkenberg the top 5, Alonso, Stroll, Gasly, Albon, Hamilton the top 10, Russell, Magnussen, Ocon, De Vries, Bottas the top 15, Sargent, Piastri, Tsunoda, Lando Norris and Zhou Guanyu currently the slowest of our 20 drivers with 25 minutes left on the clock.
And everyone still has a new set of tyres to go on to. So improvements for Verstappen there, improvements for Perez. That was on the same set of softs, I believe. And so that, again, just shows the softs are hanging on pretty well. The degradation looks fairly low. And the track grip is coming up. Hülkenberg, remember Haas went out so late in the session, missed the first about 20 minutes of it. So they were playing catch-up, letting everyone else clean the track up. And it's paid off for Hülkenberg right now. 5th place, only 8 laps on that first run, but it's enough to launch him up with a very decent lap time. Magnussen 12th with just 6 laps on the board.
Yeah, Christian, Kevin Magnussen came on the radio not too long ago saying it definitely feels the wind is picked up. It's a bit gustier. What's it like down there?
Yeah, notably gustier. It's much windier than yesterday, and we've got more cloud cover than yesterday, so it's less intense heat. I'm imagining that will be having an impact on the track temperature. And actually, that was one of the points I was going to raise as Lewis Hamilton comes back out in front of me. I noticed, I said last time I was on, that when Lewis Hamilton pitted, everybody immediately started scurrying around the tyres because Lewis was on the radio talking about lack of grip in the tyres. One thing that was really noticeable on the set of softs that were took off is that they were very scratched up on one side only. Jolyon, do you think that might have an impact? Might that be to do with the grip that Lewis was talking about? It was really noticeable how there was a sort of dividing line down the middle with one side of the tyre much more scratched up than the other.
You're on the tyre, you talk about graining. Yes. On the tyre.
Graining, yeah.
Lots of vibrations on the steering brake through about high speed.
So Russell there on the radio, he's on a new set of tyres and he's complaining about vibrations. So they changed the steering rack yesterday at Mercedes, and George not happy on his new boots here into the final corner. There's not going to be a stellar lap. For Hamilton, maybe that is just signs of, he's done 13 laps, which is more than anyone else apart from the 2 Ferraris who've done 15. So lap after lap after lap, and maybe it's just simply signs of some wear and some breakup on the surface of the rubber on the left-hand side.
Yeah, just noticing down here at McLaren now, you look at some of their scrub tyres, and there is nowhere near that sort of dividing line with the graining on one side. So that is something to keep an eye on for Mercedes, I think, as to whether they continue with their grip struggles. Because, as I say, looking at McLaren's tyres, let me have a look at Alpine's. Hang on. Yeah, again, not quite as noticeable on the Alpines as well. So let's keep an eye on that, whether Mercedes' grip trouble continues.
Yeah, it's good intel, because it probably means that they're not getting the tyres fired up properly. You get a bit of graining when the tyres, you're pushing on it, but it's not in their, they're not in their operating window where they're giving you the grip back, and they're just squirming a little bit, sliding and moving that bit of rubber on the surface. So it probably goes to show Hamilton 10th, and is the zone you can hear now, heading into turn 1 on his new set of tyres. Russell 11th, didn't improve on his new tyres there, just a 100th away from what he'd already done with vibrations through the steering. Mercedes very unhappy, and it could just be tyre related. And that's why 1 minute they're up, topping the times in FP1, and ever since then they've just been scratching their heads, and it doesn't look any better for them now.
A punch to the gut, Lewis Hamilton described their free practice 2 pace, and George Russell getting out in free practice 1 and immediately coming across problems with his steering rack in the end. They changed that out, but still not happy out there. The sound of Lewis Hamilton into the braking zone, down the gears, into the left-hander. Personal best sector 1, keeping it nice and tight. But so far, through the really tight and twisty middle sector, the tricky left-right of 14 and 15 into the almost 90-degree left-hander, which brings you onto the long back straight, 1.28 kilometres up through the gears. DRS wide open for Lewis Hamilton. So easy to lock a brake, though, coming into turn 17. Let's see how he manages it. keeps it turned in, nice and tidy for Hamilton through the arcing left and right-hander that make up the final 2 corners of this Miami Grand Prix track. And it's 5th place, but a second off the pace.
Plus 4/10 of that in the final sector, which is just the last corner and a straight and a half, really. So definitely not particularly well equipped in the straights. That's not a huge shock, knowing the Mercedes is quite a draggy car. It's basically got a chunky rear wing on, so they're not very efficient down the straights. And I wonder if they've still got the engine in all singing and all dancing there for Hamilton on new tyres to just nip ahead of Nico Hülkenberg on his first run in the Haas. It's yeah, still quite well off the pace.
A lot of work going on in Max Verstappen's side of the garage. He sat in the car and he's got the engineers. Adrian Newey is getting involved as well. He's had a few headrest issues and struggling with visibility and being able to move in that cockpit. But Adrian Newey, the Chief Technical Officer, that was a bit of news actually coming into this weekend. He's extended his contract with Red Bull, which everyone in Red Bull will be ecstatic about. Everybody else on the grid, it's not good news.
Well, he's done a phenomenal job, hasn't he? And Christian Horner, Max Verstappen saying what a great thing it is to have Adrian Newey in the team, and it shows. Already they've had very low amount of wind tunnel time, and they've created a monster of a car. The man's got a very good proven track record, and he's really thriving in these ground effect cars as well.
He's technically an 11-time world champion, is Adrian Newey, having won championships, of course, with Red Bull, having joined them in 2006. But previous to that, Williams and McLaren taking titles too. Adrian Newey, certainly a man to keep hold of.
Seems to be losing a lot more in the straights.
Yeah, copy, we'll have a look at that.
Hamilton on the radio, almost confirming what you suspected, Jolien, really. They're losing a lot of time on the straights, and when the final sector is pretty much dominated by a straight, it's not really what you want to hear. 18.5 minutes left on the clock. Ocon heads over the line in the Alpine. His best finish in the USA, 6th in Austin for Force India back in 2017. Interesting, Pierre Gasly has never scored a point in an American Grand Prix since the start of his race. Just another stat to throw in there for you. Can he change that today? Certainly going better than last weekend. McLaren also looked pretty quick in FP2, perhaps a little bit of showboating with their lap times on soft tyres in free practice 2. The sound you're hearing is Lando Norris with a huge snap. How did he keep that out of the wall, Jolien?
If he hadn't have kept it out of the wall, it would have been a huge crash there for Norris as he was heading into to turn 4, the left-hander. He was coming around an Alpine, but I don't think the Alpine really got in his way. He just chucked it in with too much speed, really attacking that corner. The back stepped out, and Norris looked like he was just going to be overcorrecting it straight to the walls and managed to fishtail it round, just kind of balancing the steering, catching the rear end with no concentration of keeping it on the track, just concentrating on bombing across the runoff area and keeping it out the barriers. Quite some save at high speed, that from Lando.
Certainly was. He's currently down in 19th, though, in the timings. Piastri's teammate has just put in a lap time good enough for 14th position. Christian, you're outside McLaren.
I'm outside McLaren and was just about to come on and say, and by the way, this is far from a McLaren-specific issue, but I've just been talking to McLaren and they were saying the drivers are on the radio reporting that not only wind speed, but changes of wind direction is much more of a factor than it was yesterday. Harry, you asked me earlier about the wind, and it is much more noticeable than it was yesterday. And actually, even throughout the session, it's got windier and windier. So, yeah, in fact, a plume of dust just sprung up in front of me from the wind, which, again, we haven't seen all weekend. So the wind is really starting to become a factor in this session for the drivers. And I wonder if that was a contributor to Lando's big moment we just saw there.
Could well be, especially on kind of wider street circuits. It can really funnel between the barriers, and that's the faster corners where it will affect the cars even more, and they're more loaded up. We're not seeing a massive flurry of improvements just yet from drivers on new softs. Verstappen might buck that trend as I'm talking, though. Pumped in the fastest first sector of the session so far, and he's on it through the middle already with 4/10 over Sainz. And then there's Perez. Gasly in 4th position. Leclerc 5th, still in the pits, but it's Verstappen who's on a march once again.
Yeah, further back in the pack. Bottas and Zhou Guanyu, the two Alfa Romeos, out there as well, looking like they're improving on their lap times. Personal best for those two at the moment. Bottas gets up to 9th as he crosses the line. Zhou Guanyu coming into the final sector now. His teammate put in a 1:28.8. What can Zhou Guanyu do? He's going to need to find a couple of seconds or so to match up to that, but so far so good for Zhou Guanyu, who will be coming around the final corner any moment now. Zhou Guanyu crossing the line, and he goes 12th fastest in the Alfa Romeo. So improvements for them, but with 15 minutes of this session remaining, expect the cars that are currently in the pits to get back out there and set some fast lap times to see where we might be come qualifying in just a couple of hours' time. But at the moment, it's looking rather ominous for Max Verstappen.
Yeah, just nibbled away at the top of the times. Now has half a second to Carlos Sainz. So found a little over a 10th there on the last lap. All in the first sector, actually, for Max. It was his first lap on these brand new softs. And it looks like that we've seen it already in their first run. The tyres are just hanging on and hanging on. That's why with 15 minutes to go, we've still got cars out there. There's 16 cars, now 17 cars out there as De Vries gets back on track in the AlphaTauri. And they've all gone quite early on this because the tyres are giving them that luxury of getting more and more laps, more knowledge of the circuit as well. And it's rubbering in the circuit a bit more, which will be pleasing for all of them.
Yeah, the only cars that are in the pits, well, it's the two Hasses who have spent a lot of time already in the pits. Sargent, Leclerc and Sainz heads into the pits as well. Christian.
Yeah, down at McLaren, and just to confirm what we were talking about earlier, that Lewis Hamilton's graining on one side of the tyre does seem to me to be unusual. Still at McLaren, and just got a real close look at Oscar Piastri's scrubbed set of softs. They didn't look to be having anywhere near that sort of level of graining on one side but not the other. And again, talking to the guys at McLaren, that just hasn't really been an issue for them. Also, Alex Albon, I think it was Alex Albon, it was certainly one of the Williams, just went past me. Again, on scrubbed softs, again, not seeing that dividing line that we saw in Lewis Hamilton's tyres. So it'll be really interesting to see as we move into qualifying whether these tyre issues, these grip issues, and we obviously saw George Russell yesterday with steering issues, whether they remain, because we're expecting that, well, not the upper midfield pack, you know, the best of the rest pack, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Mercedes, to be super close. If these issues continue for Mercedes, that could easily be the difference between second row down to fourth or even fifth row if this carries on.
Russell's gone to 5th, which is better for them. Hamilton has just been through the pits and is in 8th place, but just a 10th back. It's so tight from Gasly, who's in 4th in the Alpine and improving, down pretty much the whole rest of the field, most of the bulk of it. Anyway, everyone that's done a second run is within half a second of Gasly in 4th. It's just the Red Bulls and Sainz who's the lead Ferrari at the moment, but both Ferraris yet to do a new tyre run at the end here.
The two Haas drivers done the least amount of laps, 8 for Nico Hülkenberg, 6 for Kevin Magnussen. Spent a lot of time in the pits at the start of FP3, gone back into the pits as well. Are they just being conservative or risking of a crash into the wall again, especially with these new bits? Don't want to take the chance?
I think they're just sticking to a run plan. The car looks pretty quick. Hulkenberg on that first run, he's still 9th quickest. So Ocon's out there trying to improve, and he's still stuck behind him in 10th. Crossed the line and made a small improvement. Gasly improves further in 4th place. So Alpine's looking okay, but they're still split by Hulkenberg. So the pace of the car looks okay. They're just going to do what Mercedes did yesterday and wait for the end of the session when the track's at its best, and it'll be the most representative time to pump in a soft tyre lap before qualifying. Ferrari are doing the same thing out front as well. Still second, still 7th with Leclerc, but they'll go late and should make inroads on this leaderboard. As Bottas goes to 5th. Much better.
And Albon right up behind him in 6th as well. So all change currently in the top 10, so expect that to divvy up in these last 11.5 minutes. So while we've been chatting, Lance Stroll had a bit of a hairy moment coming through the fast left right-hander of 14 and 15 in the middle sector. Big snap on the steering wheel, but managed to keep it out of the wall and pointing in a straight line. You're listening to Max Verstappen going very slowly down the main of the back straight, just keeping out of the way of the quicker cars coming through, and it really amplifies how fast these cars get up to speed around this track. Average speed about 140 miles an hour.
Verstappen's really trundling. He's just on a very slow lap, but he's starting another very slow lap. I wonder if there's an issue with that Red Bull. Otherwise, there's something strange going on with his run plan to do a slow one, and then he's just back straight off it again at basically 2 laps worth of slow pace. You could do 2 laps at the same time as Verstappen's just done 1. That's how slow he's going out there.
You're listening to George Russell down through the gears into turn 1 and 2.
I cannot get through turn 2, so much hopping.
Have a look at turn 2 and get back to you.
He's not happy, Jolene, is he? It's not been a good Miami weekend so far for George Russell.
He topped FP1 and now it's all going wrong for Mercedes, hopping, so the tyres are just skimming across the surface, and Chris has been talking about the damage that he can see to the front left. Well, turn 2 would be more on the front right that's loaded up, but the Mercedes car just not connected at the moment, maybe running very stiff and just not able to get those tyres fired up. And Russell, he's ahead of Hamilton. Hamilton's just improved his lap time as well and is a tenth away from George Russell, 7th and 9th. But they're behind at the moment. Williams of Albon, an Alfa Romeo of Bottas, an Alpine of Gasly. It's not looking pretty at all for Mercedes.
Not at all, and the 2 Hasses are now back out on track. Magnussen and Hulkenberg. Magnussen just starting a flying lap now, coming through the fast S's that make up Sector 1. Down, it's been shuffled down to 15th position so far for K-Mag, and at the moment needs to try and out-qualify Nico Hulkenberg, who so far has had to measure him in qualifying. It's gone Magnussen's way during the races, but Hulkenberg, courtesy of a 7th place in Australia, picking up the majority of the points so far for Magnussen. DRS open, sparks flying at the bottom of that Haas as he comes to the end of the DRS zone into the left-hander. Keeps it nice and tidy. So far so good, but it's only personal bests at the moment. Zhou Guanyu also going well. Nico Hulkenberg doesn't look like he's as fast as his teammate. Kevin Magnussen going slightly quicker in the first sector as Hulkenberg comes into the middle sector. Verstappen putting in a few ominous mini sectors, but falling off the pace in the middle sector at the moment with 8.5 minutes left of this final practice session.
I think he's about to reduce his best lap time, Max Verstappen, as he comes across the line now. And he does, but only by a smidgen. It was the just nudged the best middle sector down slightly. Wasn't as quick in the first and third, and it's just lap after lap though that's just chipping away at it. It's another lap that's half a second clear of the field, but the 2 Ferraris are now on track. Leclerc is on a flyer. Sainz has just left the pit, so he'll go a little bit later. With 8 minutes to go, they've left it really late for this set of softs. The track will be in its best condition, and Leclerc's done a first sector that's all right.
Flipped the exit curve quite badly out of 7. Check the floor there in the front.
Yeah, copy that.
Nico Hulkenberg then, I did wonder, he dropped massively off in the middle sector on the sector timing screen. So Magnussen meanwhile got up into 8th. So Hulkenberg having a little bit of a clip there in the wall yesterday. The Haas mechanics set to work last night, doing a great job to get that Haas up and running for FP3. Team principal Gunther Steiner watching on from the pit wall, but a good lap time from Magnussen to get himself up into the top 8.
Yeah, Leclerc improves to 6th, although it wasn't a personal best in the middle sector. Plenty more to come. That was Susanna Hulkenberg getting wide over the curb, and you heard the rev spike as he bottomed out, trying to get back on. Coming out of turn 7, Lando Norris has had a filthy lock-up down at turn 1. Both the front tyres locked solid as he hit the brakes, and the McLaren's 17th and 18th. That's a new set of tyres for Norris, then that is not going to be particularly clever for them. A team that looked quite good yesterday, not so much right now.
Well, I wonder how much fuel they were running on those fast laps they set yesterday as well.
No one will be running, a lot of the midfielders won't be running high tanks, so they maybe will be flattering themselves compared to the Red Bulls, the Ferraris and Mercedes, maybe Aston Martin, although Aston Martin are currently 12th and 13th and not looking all that tidy. Alonso's on a better lap here, but only just. McLaren have just seemed to have, maybe they flattered themselves a little bit yesterday, but not to the extent that they should fall away to 17th and 18th right now, only ahead of the AlphaTauris.
Yeah, Verstappen still fast as he's in the pits. Sainz, Perez, Ocon, Gasly, his Tsunoda.
Oh, it's incredible, it's so understair.
Okay.
Yuki Tsunoda struggling with understeer in his AlphaTauri as Fernando Alonso crosses the line in the Aston Martin to go 11th fastest. The two Alpines up in 4th and 5th have been going very quietly well so far in this free practice session after a disaster in Baku. Nico Hülkenberg gets a lap time on this soft set run and puts himself up into 7th place, just in front of Leclerc and behind Bottas.
What's going on with the order? It's very mixed up. Apart from the...
It's great. If it's like this for qualifying, bring it on.
Yeah, I mean, Verstappen, with 5 minutes to go, looks like he's got it in the bag. Half a second still to the Ferraris and Perez's teammate. Perez not far ahead of Ocon, who's just improved to go 4th, as you said. Gasly 5th. They're neck and neck, just 200 separated the two Frenchmen in the Alpines. Then you've got Bottas in an Alfa Romeo that's been turgid for the last few races. Valtteri's been driving around at the back. Looks a little bit rejuvenated right now on a track he did well at last year.
I'm really struggling to drive this at the moment. The balance is just all over the place.
Sargent's not happy in the Williams, but his teammate Alex Albon is up in 9th. That's pretty brilliant for Albon. Remember, that car was pretty handy in Melbourne as well, with Albon into Q3, and then he crashed in the Grand Prix, but he's shown flashes of pace this year, and he's up in the top 10 again, ahead of both Mercedes. And you've got Hülkenberg has just improved to 7th. The only car that's not looking good right now is AlphaTauri and McLaren, as we said. Man, Mercedes, 10th and 13th.
Yeah, this is fascinating, really. It's not what we maybe predicted coming into this weekend, but it certainly looks like, if we're going off free practice 3, a bit of a jumbled up order after Verstappen. It's Sainz and Sergio Perez, the top 3, as Logan Sargent comes back into the pit lane. A little bit of a shake of his helmet in the cockpit. Not too happy then with the balance and the performance of his Williams at the moment. He's down in 16th, only ahead, as you say, Jolene, of the 2 McLarens and the 2 AlphaTauris of Nick De Vries and Yuki Tsunoda, making up the last 2 runners with just under 4 minutes left on the clock. And no one going particularly well on a lap at the moment. Christian is outside Williams.
Yeah, I've not been down here all afternoon, so I thought I'd pop down and see how they're getting on. And Williams very, very happy with Alex Albon, who, as you were just saying, flying high in the timesheet. And the team pointed out to me, had a mega result here last year. Already we're only 2 years into Miami, but Williams thinking that this is a track that Alex Albon very much looks at home on. Logan struggling a little bit more. He had a lot to learn about Sector 1 apparently yesterday, which he was struggling with a little bit. And again, that's also the sector which a lot of the drivers talking about changing wind speed. So again, for these rookies learning new tracks and new conditions, it might be that they've not experienced sort of these changing wind conditions in Formula 1 yet. So Logan's still very much learning, but Alex Albon doing a cracking job for Williams. They're very much happy with him so far.
Sector 1 is quite a complicated sector. It's where the faster corners are, and Sargent is still quite a long way adrift of Albon. I think he's 3 or 4 tenths away from Albon in that first sector, which takes you all the way through to the end of turn 8. The 6, 7, 8, kind of one long left-hander where Hülkenberg dropped it wide and bounced over the curb. Takes you down to there. So it's quite a busy sector. Sector 2 is more the low-speed stuff, and Sector 3 is kind of 2 straight lines with a left-handed tight corner, big braking zone. Sector 1, by rule of thumb, is high speed. Sector 2 is low speed. Sector 3 is straight line speed.
You're listening to George Russell in the Mercedes, making his way around as he comes into the tight left-hander of 14, brings you up onto the high curb on the right-hand side of 15. And then before you know it, you're into the left-hander that brings you on to the back straight. DRS will go open, if you get it, on the 1.28 kilometre stretch that leads down into the braking zone of turn 17. And Russell, not on a flyer it seems, but makes it into the left-hander. In fact, goes a little bit deep, and the rear end getting a little bit wobbly as he heads out into the last 2 corners and crosses the line.
Perez goes second at the end of this, but it might not be there to stay, because Leclerc, who's done 8th, is on a lap as we're minute 30 away from the checker flag. There's not going to be many improvements coming in, but Charles Leclerc is out of position in 8th. Sainz is 3rd. Leclerc had a crash at the end of yesterday and hasn't been able to match his teammate yet, but he's on a personal best through the first and second sector on this lap. A small improvement would take him from, if he finds a 10th, he'll go from 8th up to 4th. It looks like he's going to find a little more than that. So Leclerc could yet get close to Perez and Sainz. I don't think anyone is going to get close to Verstappen, though.
the BBC's chief F1 writer thinks they're all just doing weird run plans, so it's not as we think it is. But imagine if that was the grid. Lining up, Leclerc 8th, Albon 9th, Russell in 10th. It would be fascinating.
Leclerc goes second, but he's still 4 tenths away. Yeah, I don't think they're doing necessarily weird run plans, but the tyres are acting a little bit weird, is what's happening, I think. Maybe the gusty wind is inconsistent, but Leclerc's been out there for a few laps now. No one really has found huge gains on the first lap on soft tyres. Sometimes it's lap 2 or 3. The tyres are quite consistent, and just trying to get them into the right window seems to be a big headache for teams. And Mercedes 10th, 13th, Aston Martin 12th and 14th. They're kind of big teams that right now look like they're struggling to get into Q3. But everyone's done the same run plan effectively. 2 sets of soft tyres in this one, and they've given it a fair crack. We've got quite a weird order.
5 seconds left until the checkered flag. Christian.
Still down at Williams, but actually right at the end of the pit lane, stood behind the safety car, looking down on turn 1. And I often get asked by new fans to Formula 1, how can you tell the difference, other than the clock, how can you tell the difference in speed? It is so much more noticeable when these guys are on hot laps. The difference in movement between the cars at the top end of the grid, the higher speed cars, and the lower end. So I was just watching an AlphaTauri wriggle under braking going down into turn 1, whereas then the Red Bull behind, smooth as you like as the cars shed speed going down into turn 1. It's fascinating. From this angle, you can see the difference in terms of corner entry that will be adding up to crucial times in that first sector that Jolyon was talking about, and it's noticeable, particularly the first 4 cars, Red Bull down to Aston Martin, Ferrari and Mercedes, how much more comfortable they are than, again, an AlphaTauri right in front of me now, having a little wiggle as it goes into turn 1. Really interesting stuff. Again, quite possibly backing some of the wind down there.
Quite possibly, thanks Christian. Yeah, well, at the back of the pack, it's the AlphaTauris and the McLaren struggling at the moment, but the checkered flag has fallen on this pre-practice 3 session, the last of the practice sessions. Now we get into the business end of the weekend. Verstappen fastest ahead of Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez third, Sainz and Ocon the top 5, Gasly, Bottas, Hulkenberg, Albon, Russell making up the top 10. Then it's Magnussen, Alonso, Hamilton in 13th ahead of Stroll, Zhou Guanyu is 15th, Yuki Tsunoda, Logan Sargent. The 2 McLarens of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris are 18th and 19th, and Nick De Vries is in 20th and last at the end of that FP3 session. Jolyon, what did we learn? What are you taking away from that into qualifying later on today?
It's pretty mixed up. It's all to play for, unless you want to play for the win, in which case it's Max Verstappen's. He's just looked so composed so far this weekend. Perez is struggling to get within half a second of him. It's a track that Max won at last year, and he's looking hooked up. I think Verstappen will be a really solid favourite for pole position later on. And then the 2 Ferraris have been quite evenly matched. Maybe if they've got anything left in the tank and Max loses his way in the next couple of hours or makes a mistake, then they might fancy something. But I think they're in a fight for the front row, because Perez is looking a little bit more vulnerable in the other Red Bull here. As for the rest, who knows? We've got a Haas up there, we've got Alpines up there, we've got an Alfa Romeo up there from nowhere. Williams are in the top 10 again. It is anyone's game for Q3, and that's quite fun.
That's what we all love to hear, isn't it? This time last year, it was advantage Ferrari, really, heading into qualifying, but now certainly it is Max Verstappen, his teammate Sergio Perez, who all the hope was behind after winning last time out in Baku, is about half a second adrift at the end of FP3. Can he try and find that time and close up? It's Red Bull, Ferrari at the moment, but Jolyon, the Alpines up in 5th and 6th. I know we talk about a jumbled up order, but of course they introduced some new bits and bobs at the last weekend in Baku, but it was a disaster weekend for them. But clearly it seems that perhaps they are working.
They were pretty bullish about these upgrades before they put them on last time out, and the weekend just went awfully for them. But there was a lot of circumstance as well. In a sprint weekend, they missed the mileage in practice and paid a really hefty price for it. They still back themselves with the upgrades. They've now had 3 hours of practice to try and get on top of it, and they're 5th and 6th. It's very, very tight in that battle, though. They're right there with Bottas, with Hulkenberg, I'm sure the Mercedes and the Aston Martins will jump up a little bit. Surely they've got more to find from where they are now. So I wouldn't say they've leapt forward, but they've just nudged themselves to the front of that pack. We'll see when we know they're all on fumes going for qualifying laps later on.
Yeah, really only a few tenths of splitting that mid-pack, Christian.
Well, that's exactly the point I was going to raise, because it was noticeable on Thursday that, as I say, that upper mid-pack just had no idea what order they'd be in. So I think that's one of the key things to look out for in qualifying. What's going to be the very middle of the pack order, and also what's going to be the order between Ferrari, Mercedes and Aston Martin. We're still not really any the wiser.
All right, well, thank you very much, Christian Hugel down in the pits, Jolyon Palmer alongside myself, Harry Benjamin. That is practice done and dusted on 5 Live. We now get into the sharp end and qualifying coming up. But Verstappen looks like he is in prime position. Mercedes struggling. It's a jumbled up order at the moment. Let's see who can claim pole position a little later on. Do join us from 8:55 on Sports Extra. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.